All right, Grizz Nation, we are back for a postseason episode here. We've got some great things to get to, but I'm just your Adam Healy, your fanatic Grizz fan, with Luke Rounds, your former defensive line for the Grizz, and we have a guest here, Daniel Steenkamer. I got it right again.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. He is a freelance writer for Hero Sports FCS, and he's the managing sports director at the UD Review, a student newspaper out in Delaware. And he's also going to be calling the game this weekend for Delaware and Montana. So thank you for coming on, Daniel. And yeah, how are you?
Oh, I'm well, Adam, and great to meet you, Luke, as well. Thank you so much for the opportunity. This is awesome. So I'm looking forward to getting into it. Two great, FCS brand names, and it's been too long since these teams have met. Not in my lifetime have they played, is my recollection. So this will be a good one.
It was 1993 the last time they played.
Yeah.
That just tells us how old we are.
You got the better of us by.
That was not my intent. I'm gonna get myself up on the wrong foot here, gentlemen.
No, you're good. You're good. I was gonna talk about it later, anyways. But that was back when we had. You'll see when you go to the stadium this weekend. So if you see Daniel around, take care of him, Missoula.
Exactly.
That was back when we had grass end zones. Now it's all filled in with bleachers, and I mean, totally different stadium. And we wore the colors I'm wearing right now, the old copper and gold back then. I was actually at that game, but I think I was 12. So, that's a long time ago. A long time ago.
For sure.
Yeah.
So Daniel, you've been a busy guy today, with Delaware, jumping here in the next couple of years to FBS. How are people taking it? And do you think it's a good move to the Conference USA?
Well, off the bat, I would say, it's a move, and it's a gateway into the FBS for Delaware. And it's a situation where, I think it would be inaccurate to say that Delaware had its pick of the litter of G5 conferences, right? I mean, you look at the Sun Belt, that's a conference that's very strong in football, which is where Delaware wants to be strong, is in football, especially. Now, Delaware wants a broad-based athletic department success when they speak, publicly. But, locals to Newark, Delaware know that UD football is, the flagship sport of the athletic department. And so Delaware wants to be in a conference that is very strong in football. And I really felt the Sun Belt fits that, especially right now. You have former CAA rivals, namely James Madison, that we all know and maybe not love from the FCS level, but JMU doing great things in the Sun Belt. And not just JMU, but you look at another former FCS school like Coastal Carolina, very recently being ranked, and in App State and Georgia Southern, two historic FCS names, they're now in the FBS and very well established. And so, at least from where I sit, now this is not something that people at Delaware have told me, but from where I sit, just as somebody who's grown up in Delaware and followed the program all my life, and some other fans too, that might have been the most ideal spot. If you were going to be in a Southeastern-based league like Conference USA, you probably would have liked to be there with a Marshall, with an Old Dominion. Those are more schools in that Eastern division of the Sun Belt. But for Delaware, Conference USA becomes the place that was ready to expand. It also has other former FCS schools. You look at one like Sam Houston, which is where former Delaware coach Casey Keeler is still coaching to this day. So that'll be an interesting situation. Maybe Coach Keeler and Coach Ryan Carty will coach against each other in a game, in a conference game. That would be really something in 2025. But I know it's a loaded answer to your question, but in the end, Delaware, it got to a point, and I've written about this, and other local media have written about this, to the point where, Delaware had come to a point where it had looked around the CAA, and sure, Delaware was part of the schools that ultimately accepted the new additions to CAA football, right? So you can't say Delaware was what a victim here. Like, that's not the Blue Hens condition, but they considered their whole status in the conference and the way it's trending, right? So you have a JMU exit, and you have Bryant University entering in football next year. Bryant's investing in its facility, and I've been to Bryant University. I've been to their football stadium, and seeing it now in the indoor facility they have is already very nice. And what the work they're planning on doing is, so I'm not trying to take any shots their direction, but I do think that it's an example of a place where it's not the same as an establishment place like Delaware, where you have 18,000 seats at home and you draw 16, 17 on average when things are going well, right? And in the year 2023. And it's a situation where Delaware, I think, ultimately has a really ambitious athletic director, and finally became of a mind where it could sense that its fans were, looking for a different kind of home conference schedule. And again, Conference USA, they're going to be fans who are opposed to it. If you go on Delaware's message board, you'll see there are plenty of people opposed to it. And they're saying, you want to compete for a championship in the FCS, which has been Delaware's expectation for years. And it's fallen behind that expectation more recently. But, you want to see it contending for a national title. And you want to see schools like Villanova and Richmond and William & Mary on the schedule. But with the expansion of the conference, you lose a lot of those games against Richmond and William & Mary because you're playing on a rotation with other schools that have been added, whether it's Hampton or Campbell, places like that. And Delaware is looking to do more facilities work. And the feedback they've gotten from what I know, and has also been reported by Kevin Tressolini of the Delaware News Journal out this way, is that Delaware, got feedback in its feelers with big donors about, hey, can we solicit money for a new end zone renovation that would include a football indoor facility, a new indoor facility to replace the field house that's in place right now at Delaware? The feedback was, sure, we'll open up our wallets eventually if you actually, make a move on going to the FBS and finally not, put this off or, give the status quo of the CAA and that kind of thing. So it's so many different things. It's the conference, the CAA as it stands today, which Delaware is complicit in partially. So I'm not saying that's a, woe is me scenario for Delaware, but it's the condition of the CAA, particularly CAA football as it stands today. And it's the facilities ambition. It's the ambition of the athletic director, Chrissy Raywalk, who's an outstanding AD for Delaware and has really made a lot of good coaching hires and is, driven a lot of fundraising life into the program. And now to take this next fundraising step, Delaware is as a state flagship. I'm talking to one as well in the University of Montana. I know you guys. I know you just had the brawl and everything, and you can assert that as well. So not every state flagship is the same, and every situation is different. And for me, I grew up in the FCS. I love the format. I love the playoffs. I love the 24 teams. It's bittersweet for me to see this from another well-known FCS name on its way up. But I think for Delaware, this was the right move, even if it's not ideal as a conference goes. To answer your question, it's probably not an ideal conference. As of right now, you don't have UMass joining. So I spent way much time talking about this. This is Montana.
No problem. It's interesting.
That's kind of where it lies right now.
Yeah, because it is interesting because it does talk about kind of like where Delaware is at, because it's hard to look at all these CAA schools because I believe there's like 14, 15 CAA schools.
Yeah, 15 football playing schools this year.
Mm-hmm. And so and there's this big thing from the conference saying of how they're going to do ties and stuff, because you had going in the last week 3 teams that could be tied for that championship. So it's interesting to see. And I believe just looking at Delaware's schedule, they did play New Hampshire, which is pretty good CAA school. You got Villanova, but you're not looking at Richmond. You're not looking at some of those other CAA schools that are really well known. And so it's kind of hard. And I hate how the Big Sky does that too. Not everyone plays everyone, and so it is kind of hard to see who is the better team in those aspects. And each time that another, and you tell me, Daniel, because we had this question from a fan, and I wanted to get to it before we kind of go to the other things, but they were wondering if we thought Delaware was a blue blood. Now, back in the olden days when we were kind of a blue blood, 93 in the 90s, I think that Delaware probably could have been or would have been that top echelon. But later they've had some trouble with some things as well, and we kind of had our stint as well. Maybe not. We've had some earlier years where we're cooking too, but do you think they're a blue blood still?
It's tricky to say. I mean, Delaware is now in 3 of its last 4 FCS playoff seasons. Like, it's made the playoffs in 3 of the last 4 years. Now, one of them was the condensed spring season and condensed spring bracket, and Delaware made a run there. But I don't put an asterisk on that because, hey, if you played, you played. There were enough teams to field a season. But some people will. So okay, take that into account. It was a short regular season, so to win the CAA that season like Delaware did, it's not exactly the same, right? It's not an apples to apples comparison. So I would say whether Delaware is a blue blood in the FCS, I think it's questionable. It's sort of like, is Nebraska an FBS blue blood? Like Nebraska's program. No, I think Delaware's programs are better. It used to be Nebraska, probably, right? Like when it comes to Nebraska, it became a meme for different. And I guess I don't know how Nebraska's done this season, to be honest with you. Like, I don't follow the FBS that closely. I mean, I keep an eye on the top of it, but so I could be throwing Nebraska's name out there and I shouldn't be. But I just think of a place that has that historic pedigree, but isn't in the 2010s. Like in my prime of my growing up, watching 2010s football, Delaware made the 2010 final against Eastern Washington and collapsed in that game. And hadn't been the same for a number of years, and hadn't put it together, and had some near playoff misses, and had a couple maybe coaching hires that were, or a coaching hire that was a misstep in terms of just not the right place and right time. And and you have some very mediocre seasons. You put them together, and you're going like an 8-year playoff drought. Yeah, I would say that's hardly qualifies you as a blue blood anymore. And so as Delaware closes this chapter of its football history in the FCS pretty soon here, it's definitely an open question. I'm glad you asked me, because it's really debatable about, did Delaware ever really achieve its true potential in the FCS? It's tricky to say, because it did, like many of the other Eastern Coast counterparts, it got bypassed in some ways, or more than some ways, by those Valley and Big Sky schools, and also was bypassed by App State and Georgia Southern, who moved up into a good league, and
Yeah.
and JMU too. So now Delaware is sort of playing catch up in that half of the country, right? Like I think regionally, Delaware being the FBS is going to be a big home run because they're going to see Temple, Navy, possibly on the out of conference schedule, whereas you got Navy on the road but never at home. You can't get Temple at all right now, and maybe you'll still have trouble if you're Delaware, even in Conference USA, getting Temple. Just with Temple wants to maybe avoid a loss in that in that recruiting area and that Philly area. But in the end of the day, you get JMU maybe back on non-conference schedule. You get ODU back on it. So, regionally in the Eastern time zone, the FBS, Delaware getting to that Southeast recruiting territory more is great, but it's FCS, legacy. It's very mixed. It's very mixed legacy. So I would envy, if I'm Delaware, I would envy schools like NDSU and SDSU, not just for the titles they already have, but for the fact that they really achieved their true peak. We can say they achieved their true peak, obviously, that and much more before any thought of maybe the Dakota States moving up as well.
Well, one thing that I know I was surprised about, like the see any team move up this year, was because of the fact that they changed the rules this year. And I believe isn't it like $5 million now to even
That's right
for it. And you have to have an invite too, I believe, by so that's surprised when I heard about Delaware, I was like, whoa, that surprised me. And then Adam said that your endowment's pretty large though. So I was like, oh, well, maybe that helps, because like at the University of Montana, $5 million, that's a lot of dang money. And it's like,
I promise you it's a lot. It's a lot here too.
So it's just like, wow. So that surprised me, I think, for not just Delaware, but for any FCS team. I was like, boy, they're making it so much harder for FCS teams to move to the FBS. Right. And then all of a sudden we hear Delaware today. So it surprised me.
That makes sense. And, this is something that Delaware is not taking lightly with this $5 million. I mean, the fact that it transpired the way it did, and schools like JMU were able to move up before we had those FBS membership requirements changed with the entrance fee or the application fee of $5 million. That's a big deal. Delaware's athletic department that had really struggled to fundraise prior to Chrissy Raylock's arrival as AD. There had been drawings of Delaware Stadium renovations that had been conceptualized. Maybe I must have been in elementary school, at that point. So that's over 10 years ago. It's 15 plus years ago, right? And it never materialized. There were early drawings, and it's a loyal fan base, but the season ticket holder base a number of years ago was really diminished a lot by a season ticket holder seat license fee that made the ticket prices pretty astronomical for a 1AA FCS school, and that was coincided with Delaware having that mediocre slip on the field that I was talking about earlier. So, Delaware's in a spot where it's not, it hasn't been a fundraising powerhouse. Like people weren't knocking down the doors to buy season tickets. It's not like there was a waiting list, for much of my lifetime, like there was, or when I was very young. Certainly, there's a waiting list for season tickets. But as the prices went up, and it's a whole, I could, tell you a whole podcast episode about that. But the main point being, $5 million is not going to be a drop in the bucket for Delaware. But when you look at the scholarship count going up and the and all the travel it's going to require for football and other sports to be in Conference USA for all sports. Now, that means all the sports that Conference USA sponsors. But in for a penny, in for a pound. So almost, I think, it was going to be so pricey to get into Conference USA in particular that the $5 million, while not being ideal, it's it's part of the cost of doing business, which feels like a cliche to say in college athletics these days. But it certainly is not a part that makes it easy to swallow for Delaware. But Delaware's administration is going to have a huge release off its shoulders in terms of the fans who've been complaining about CAA football, and complaining about the CAA in general. CAA basketball is a whole other story. I really think the CAA itself, and this is another podcast topic as well, not really for tonight, but did a good job in stabilizing itself. I honestly think the CAA is going to catch a lot of flack for the football quality of the schools right now, but I think there were some good investments in all sports football playing members that they needed as JMU left. And so it becomes a situation where I think the CAA is ultimately going to be fine, and Delaware, we'll see how Delaware turns out in a league that's pretty spread out.
Yeah, exactly.
I had another question on that transition and it used to be a rule, and I told him, I was like, I don't think it is anymore, but Nate Little was asking me. He said that there used to be, and I thought I remember this when Idaho and Boise State moved up, there was an attendance bar that you had to meet too. Do you know, Daniel, is that still a thing, or is that not?
They cut it.
I thought they cut that too. Okay.
It's been eliminated in the same process as that, and I think Adam would echo that as well. It was the $5 million entrance fee and application fee was part of the equation instead of
that. Makes sense. Okay.
And as you've been following it over the years, it's a good question to ask because it had been something that wasn't really enforced all that strictly.
No, it wasn't.
Right. Yeah. So it's a situation where I think Delaware would have met it, but it isn't even applicable now. So that much gets simplified anyway.
Sure.
Yeah. So, Daniel, let's go kind of over your Delaware season here.
Yeah.
So you begin out, you guys are 9-3, 6-2 overall, I believe, in the CAA. You guys play Stony Brook your first game, 37-13 win. Then go to Penn State, and wow, that is a hard place to play.
Yeah.
63-7 loss. No qualms in that because that's a Death Valley's a hard
got a payday that day too.
Yeah.
That's usually what you
Well,
get.
and not to interject, I know I want to let you get to your question, but
Yeah.
the payday will be higher in that scenario once Delaware's in the G5, as you guys know too. So that's part of the equation too. But anyway, I just thought about you said that. But go ahead. Yep.
Yeah. You guys play St. Francis 42-14 win, and then you guys tear off an amazing stretch of beating New Hampshire 29-25, Duquesne beating them 43-17, beating North Carolina A&T,
North Carolina
A&T. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
21-6, and then Hampton 47-3, and Towson 51-13 before your other loss to Elon 33-27. You beat Campbell 45-7, and then your loss where you lost, it was a huge loss for you guys, 35-7. But you guys also lose your first string quarterback and your second string quarterback in that game right before the playoffs. That has to be heartbreaking for them and just for your team as well.
Yeah, that was a brutal way for Delaware to end the regular season, but it's been a struggle for Delaware finishing Novembers for multiple years, for multiple coaching staffs. Something about the month of November, it's systemic. I want to call it a systemic problem for Delaware's football program, and I'm not trying to be dramatic or make a soundbite in saying that, but it's just something about the way Delaware's able to finish or not able to finish seasons in some ways. Now, Delaware under Ryan Carty as head coach in its first season in 2022, Delaware lost to Villanova in a collapse fashion on the road at Villanova in a close game. Delaware had a lead in that one and actually had 2 blocked punts late in the game against Villanova. I want to say it was consecutive blocked punts, and that created an absolute collapse against Nova one year. I mean, Nova's dominated the series against Delaware for years, and it's just been absolutely Nova having UD's number. So that was part of it. And so you didn't finish last season very well, in the regular season anyway, and you still managed to make the playoffs. And then, I mean, I know Montana can relate to that a little bit too. I know there was some, Montana and Delaware, the 2 2022 playoff qualifiers that were getting a lot of slack. But anyway, in 2023, you just went over it really well, Adam, and you gave a great overview where, it's not just a quarterback situation at injury-wise for Delaware. A lot of other injuries elsewhere in the field, but I think in the end, Villanova still beat Delaware to the punch in that game in 2023 in the regular season finale. You look at a Villanova team that got the ball first, and one of the first snaps of the game ran over a 50-yard run play down in the Delaware territory and scored a couple plays later. And so that's a quick lead before Delaware's quarterbacks even take the field and get hurt, right? So Villanova beat Delaware to the punch. They were more ready to play, probably better coached and better prepared. Now, Delaware staff has been great to me. I'm not going to throw them too many aspersions their way, but Villanova seems to have the coaching, just preparedness edge, and just the edge emotionally and the confidence of, hey, we have their number and we're going to play for the classes before us that have beaten these guys X many times before. Right. And so, Villanova came out in multiple facets and played well outside of the QB injuries for Delaware. But the QB injuries did not help because Delaware had a true freshman come in who had not taken many reps in practice that week. He had gotten game reps in some of those blowouts you mentioned that were Delaware wins. He played against, I want to say, now my recall on this, I want to say, games like the one against Hampton and Towson, I want to say he got in the ball game, but I could be off on that. But so I think you're right. Yeah, there were game reps, but not nearly the same as going in against a top 10 team, a fellow top 10 team, and a rival in a game that could get the AQ for you. Right. With that level of defense that Villanova plays, it was a tough spot for freshman Nick Minicucci to play quarterback. And we saw what he can do now in the first round with a week of practice. We saw he can come around a little bit, and I'm sure we'll talk more about him. But Delaware, it's not just the injury excuse. I really think Delaware is susceptible in how it's finishing its season. Sure, Delaware is very beat up, and I'll talk more about its injuries other than quarterback because they are many. But Ryan Carty is not somebody who wants to make excuses. He'll say that in his press conference, and he'll probably say it again on Saturday if it goes against Delaware. But I do think that the Villanova game really exposes weaknesses of Delaware's defense. You can run up the middle on them. It's a 3-man front. It does a lot of odd fronts, 3-3-6 type action. A lot of DBs. Yeah. You'll see 3-2, or excuse me, 3-3-5 and 3-2-6. And so Delaware's really relying on its good linebacking group to collapse on that. Delaware does have some talented edge rushers, and the individuals on the D line are talented, and they have all conference type players on the D edge. But you're asking a lot of Delaware's front against a really good Montana team that can block you up the way Villanova can is my thought. I haven't watched all the video in Montana yet, but that's my thought. And I think you guys would probably agree. So I worry about from a Delaware sense, if you're a Delaware fan, the middle of the field, guarding the middle of the field in the run play, and also, between the tackles is what I'm saying. And then also Delaware's left the back end open against Elon in a loss and Villanova in a loss. There have been deep passing plays. There was a Lafayette pass play late in the game. I'm sure you guys are probably watching that. Lafayette took the lead, and there was a pass down the sideline on a young DB that Delaware has who's playing he's playing more because of another injury. So my rambling there is just to say, Delaware's defense, I was probably a little too harsh on Twitter. I should apologize on the record to Delaware's DC. I was tweeting about Delaware's DC, and I was like, not sure, they're going to keep him around at this point. Now, it was speculation. It was an opinion. It was not something I was reporting. And I shouldn't have done that because I was a little harsh, a little too emotional in the moment. And I don't want to be emotional because I try to be objective. And so I thought it was an objective opinion, but in other words, I'm going to apologize to Delaware's DC for questioning his job situation on Saturday during the Lafayette deficit. But at the same time, I can acknowledge that Delaware's defense has a whole show up on tape that I think Montana's going to be able to unfold a little bit.
Well, and it's kind of interesting because their defense, we play a 3-3-5.
Yep.
And where last year, where our 3-3-5 was a legitimate 3-3-5, where we got by good run teams, the neighbors, as we call them, they killed us. They killed us with the run. We've solidified that. We don't really play a 3-3-5 really anymore. I wouldn't say. I think
that's our base,
but it isn't.
And we do 4-man fronts, 5-man fronts, and we up a lot.
And not to cut you guys off, you'll see Delaware do that. You'll see a lot of times Ty Davis will be a safety who'll creep up toward the end of the D line, and he'll be an edge rusher and provide an extra support there. You'll see linebackers creep up and not put a hand in the dirt too much, but maybe standing up at the end of the D line and create a de facto 4-man or 5-man front. You'll see some delayed pressures, so Delaware's going to mix it up, but the base is similar to what you were saying.
Lots of blitzing. It reminds me of when we first adapted to the 3-3-5, where corners are blitzing and this guy's blitzing, and you got D linemen dropping into coverage. At one point, our fantastic D tackle Governor, he was a freshman, led our team in interceptions.
Wow.
He dropped it all the time. So, I mean, it's like that's that hybrid voodoo defense of the 3-3-5, if you will.
Right.
So, yeah, it's going to be kind of crazy of how things happen. But let's just kind of talk about your QB situation. Nick Minitucci, if I'm saying that hopefully right, a true freshman comes into the game out of, I believe, Don Bosco Prep.
Yep, Don Bosco.
Which is a all-star prep school, by the way, which has done a great job with QBs and other players as well. But on the season, he's 40-69 with 453 yards, 5 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 29 carries, and on 160 yards. I got that from the Delaware site, so if it's not right, it might not be updated from Lafayette. So I'm sorry, Nick, if those are not your numbers. Hopefully they got those updated. So.
Fortunately, it's not a huge sample size regardless, so I think you're okay.
Yeah. But I don't. Hey, it's his numbers. We don't want to slide him.
I hear you.
He had a hard time getting into the flow of the game. Not all of his interceptions from the Lafayette were. I wouldn't say were him. They were maybe a wide receiver falling down or a couple breakup passes where they just land right into Lafayette, which, he still gets accounted for those, but it's kind of hard because it's like, well, it's the name of the game, right? So to throw a true freshman out into that situation where you're down 28-7, I believe that at one point, is huge, and for him to come back and play like the way he did, I really give a job well done, because any other true freshman probably could have just thrown in the towel.
Sure.
So, what is the status? Because I saw you have Ryan O'Connor. He's gotten a lot of more of the reps, and he's got a lot more passing yards. 17 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. And then you got Zach Maker, Marker, 42 of 65, 678 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. And I believe that's your second stringer as well.
Yeah. I can let you know kind of some of the backstory, and then the most applicable. I don't know if I didn't want to cut you off.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
So you mentioned Marker. I would really view him as a 1B type. O'Connor 1A, Marker 1B. Delaware began the year, or I should say began the offseason, in a quarterback competition, looking to replace Nolan Henderson, is a name FCS fans might remember. And Henderson had been at Delaware for a while, and now O'Connor was the incumbent reserve. He'd been in the program since a freshman year and had been building, and now he's academically a junior, so he's my class. And he's been with Delaware for a number of years. And then Delaware also, combed far and wide through the transfer portal. Ryan Carty, told us pretty candidly they turned over a lot of stones, and they found Zach Marker, who's a JUCO transfer from Iowa Central Community College, and really, really fits the mold of what a Carty offense and many of the modern college offenses really want. A lot of mobility and a lot of accuracy. I mean, Zach Marker, he completed his first 16 passes at Towson as part of Delaware's big lead in the first half at Towson. So he was that's the kind of zone he can get into. Now, I talk about Marker and how he'd gotten hurt at Penn State. I should mention that he got hurt at Penn State, and O'Connor from there really had all the reps. Marker was not available for a certain amount of time. And so O'Connor, to his credit, O'Connor also settled into the job. He earned the job in his own right, but Delaware turned to O'Connor after that week 2 game. And so O'Connor handles the job very well. O'Connor himself gets dinged up before the Hampton game, and you see Zach Marker play there. And you can tell the injuries are a theme, right? So Marker gets more snaps. He's a little more mobile. You'll see the more rushing yards for him. And that's all this background noise because in the end, Marker's season is actually over. His season is over. He had a season-ending injury against Villanova. So Delaware does not have Delaware's most mobile quarterback is out for the year. That would be Zach Marker. Ryan O'Connor also can run. He's capable of running, and he will do so. But he's not the same, legs threat that Marker was. Now, Nick Minicucci, as we talk about him, the true freshman who played against Lafayette and was instrumental in the comeback. He is a bit more. He's not quite Zach Marker, but he's a bit more extend the play, move the pocket type guy. He's a guy who's going to, really for a young kid, do a great job feeling some pressure. Now, he didn't face the Montana front. He faced Lafayette front, but Lafayette entered the game on Saturday in the first round with 35 team sacks. So this is a team that Lafayette that was pressuring the quarterback. And I thought Nick Minicucci actually did a pretty nice job in, throwing the ball away, and giving himself extension of the play when he had to and feeling the pressure. And so he'll need to do that again at Wagraves. But I would expect Nick Minicucci to be the guy. I would expect the true freshman to be the quarterback for Delaware on the road in the second round game in front of, I'm sure, a packed crowd for Montana. It's going to be a difficult spot for the young player, but he played in big time moments in high school. Ryan Carty said that a lot. Now, he also said, leading into the Lafayette game, Ryan Carty said, look, it's different to be in the FCS playoffs. Paraphrasing him there, but it's different to be in the FCS playoffs. It's not the same as being in high school. Even if you're playing at MetLife in the New Jersey playoffs, it's not quite the same, right? So it's a D1 football tournament in this case, right? So, but Nick Minicucci, and a teammate has said this about him. He's not shaken easily, right? And of course, you expect to hear that about most quarterbacks. But for a freshman, we asked him in media availability, what his demeanor is like. And he is somebody who seems to have a really, good way of going about himself. And that's how you overcome those interceptions that maybe weren't his fault. And he knows his stat line is going down the tube, and people online are maybe gripping him and saying, go to the other freshman. Why not try somebody else? The season's over, all this stuff. And all the while he blocks out the noise and keeps Delaware in the game. And so Nick Minicucci, while it's a bad spot for Delaware to be in an objective sense, in a vacuum, to have such a young player who's making a second career start, probably going to be making. Now, again, this is not confirmed, and Ryan Carty is very tight-lipped about injuries. You're not going to know officially.
We know that. We know that kind of. Yeah.
You probably can live through that too. But so you're not going to hear it officially from UD. But my scouting report is, again, this is from covering the program. They don't make practice available to media during the playoffs. I'm not going to be able to see practice. I did see it in the regular season. But the main point being, my expectation, my projection is, my educated guess, Nick Minicucci will be the quarterback for Delaware as long as he's healthy at Montana. Ryan O'Connor has a chance. Ryan O'Connor's season is not over, so that's why I specify that. O'Connor has a lower body. Now again, there are no printed injury reports, so this is me going off of all the different bits and pieces. But O'Connor is not ruled out per se. He was on an exercise bike against Villanova after he was hurt. Then he was on the sideline moving around in that sense, unlike Marker. But it's most likely to be Minicucci one, and then another true freshman behind him. Yeah. And that's kind of where Delaware stands now. Could Ryan O'Connor surprise and make? Yes, I leave the door open for that, but I haven't heard any rumblings. Probably not going to hear a lot of tea leaves from Delaware. But the biggest thing is Minicucci gave Delaware a lot of faith from the Lafayette game, and I would say he has momentum. And Delaware is not going to be losing sleep at night just because of Nick. He actually acquitted himself quite well.
Yeah. So you guys had a really good running back crew. That the first of your running back crew is that Marcus Yarns.
Is that 21?
21, correct.
21,
He jumps off the tape.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Very, very good.
And he, he's not overly big, but he is not afraid to lower his shoulder and just go through people, which is awesome to watch. 128 carries, 871 yards, 15 touchdowns. He's averaging over 7 yards a carry. But one of the things is he, I don't know if he got hurt or he left the game against Lafayette, but that second half, I was like, where's this running back, man? Like they went to Jonathan Silver and then also Quincy Watson.
It's a little tricky. It's Joe Nathan. It's a little tricky.
Oh, Joe Nathan.
Sorry. There. It's a little tricky. He goes by Joe Silver a lot. So if you see him in the game, they'll call him Joe Silver a lot of times. But it's hard. We're getting down the depth chart, so I know it's hard.
The Grizz Nation knows I'm a horrible at names.
No, it's hard. So. It hasn't been since 93. So, and these players weren't around really in 93 either, right? So it's been a while. It's all good.
So, what's the status on Marcus Yarns? Did he get hurt or what was going on there?
He did. We were able to at least get the confirmation after the game against Lafayette that Marcus Yarns, he did fumble in the first. I want to say it was part of the first half turnovers. He did have an uncharacteristic fumble. And my one of my student media colleagues, it was I don't want to call it was a good question in a sense to say, just to make sure it wasn't a benching for Marcus Yarns, of course, right? Like it was a situation where he must have been dinged up again, right? And Coach Troy confirmed, it was a situation where he got dinged up again. And I say again because Marcus Yarns did get hurt, I want to say, against Elon to begin November. So you had Zach Marker get hurt against Towson. Delaware was up big, and Zach Marker got hurt right before the half against Towson. So that changed Delaware's season. It partially caused Delaware to falter against Elon the next week, in my opinion, honestly. And then, so you're playing with O'Connor, who's coming off his own injury, while Marker gets hurt going into the Elon game. In that same Elon game is when Marcus Yarns has a first bout with his injury. And Marcus Yarns came back after only getting one carry at Campbell. He kind of been rested, didn't have to use him at Campbell too much. He comes back against Villanova and is probably only a touch below full strength. It's kind of what the comments were from Coach Carty. And then he's back out there against Lafayette, plays early, has a touchdown run on a pretty miraculous recovery on a misplayed snap, long shotgun snap that was misplayed. And so I'm sure that video clip has been seen plenty of times. But other than that, didn't see a lot of Marcus Yarns because I'm not sure when in the game it happened in particular. It wasn't like, he's down on the field, you can see him. It must have been something that was now again, I'm not making assumptions, but maybe something that crept up again. He was on the sideline and he felt something. Regardless of how it happened, Marcus Yarns, his status is still up in the air as of right now, and Delaware probably is intentionally going to keep it that way. Not that Montana is not going to be game planning from anyway, because again, he's not huge like Adam said, but but he jumps out like you said, Luke, because I think he's so long, he has such great strides, and he's really come along well in hitting his holes very well.
That fumble question is not a bad one because our coach will bench you if you fumble. Like we've seen it many times. You fumble, and then it's like, they're not hurt. They're on the bench. So
they're on the bench.
No, it makes sense. It's just for Ryan Carty, his offense is predicated on explosive plays, and Marcus Yarns has been one of the biggest sources of explosive plays. Delaware's offense really struggles inside the red zone and inside short yard situations, and you probably saw that against Lafayette come out really well in the tape and then just watching the game live. I don't know if it's a play calling thing for Coach Carty. Fans will say it's a play calling thing, and you can argue that based on the results. Some of it has to be play calling. And some of it just is the execution for Delaware has not been there in those short yard situations. So Delaware is really reliant on scoring 30-plus yards out. I mean, they really are. It's really stunning over the course of 2 years. Now, maybe that was the trend at Sam Houston, too, when Coach Carty was OC at Sam Houston. Maybe that was the trend as well. But, Delaware is really, really looking to score on big, longer yardage plays, and Marcus Yarns has delivered that all year long. So it would have been a big surprise to see Marcus Yarns being sat in a playoff game. But it was a good question because each coach handles it differently. And in the playoffs in a big spot, it was a pretty egregious fumble just for the fact that there have been already the fluky interceptions to begin with. It was a good question. So I salute my buddy for Jared Wasserman. I should give him a shout out on the air. He did a good job. WVUD Sports, our student radio station. But anyway,
our reporters know that they can't ask certain questions.
I've tried to learn my trade with Coach Carty too. I covered Delaware when Danny Rocco was head coach too, and I got to know Coach Rocco and had a great relationship with him. And when you cover a head coach, you're at every press conference and you're at all the practices you can be at, or many, not every single one, but many of them. I try not to push too many wrong buttons, but you try to be probing when you need to.
Yeah, for sure. The other kid that I know, like for me, jumped off the tape was number 5, that K-State transfer. Looks the part.
Is that Jordan Townsend?
That is one receiver, but Luke is speaking about Joshua Youngblood, number 5.
Okay.
Number 5.
Okay.
That's the guy. Yep.
Yeah, and so I have a great story about Josh Youngblood. I'm going to sound like I'm tooting my own horn, but I promise you I'm trying to praise Youngblood. And with saying this is, one of the games I called this season at home, Delaware, I think it was the Elon game when Delaware was trying to make a furious rally and trying to go on a game-winning drive late. Ultimately, Delaware actually fumbled the football with under a minute and a half or so, about a minute and a half or so to go inside the Elon red zone. O'Connor, unfortunately for Delaware, just had the ball slip out of his hands, unforced fumble. Just as he was on the round and scrambled, he fumbled the football, and that's how that game ended. Prior to that fumble and the game-ending fumble, Delaware had a pass to Youngblood that was a bit high, and Youngblood, I said on the broadcast on WVUD, he just reached for the stars to pluck that ball. I was absolutely animated because he can really elevate. He is great in contested catches as well. He's good in traffic. He's a kind of a speed receiver who can kind of move all around. And so you would think maybe he's a bit more finesse or a bit more yards after the catch and might not be as much going through contact, but I think he can go through contact. He shows some of that P5 pedigree. He's very capable of that. Delaware has multiple wide receiver injuries. So Kim Wimberly, who's out for the season. He was out much earlier in the season. He had I want to get it wrong, but anyway, Kim Wimberly had a lower body, is what I'm going to call it. And he's out for the year. He's a Harvard transfer, a grad transfer who was all conference in the Ivy League. Kim Wimberly out. JoJo Bermudez is a Cincinnati transfer for Delaware who's very fast. I like to use him in a lot of places. He missed the Lafayette game as well. So Delaware's missing a number of starting level receivers. And Josh Youngblood is one of those, those last starting receivers along with Jordan Townsend, who Adam mentioned, rightfully so, who's also very talented. But Youngblood has really, I think, proven himself to where, he didn't just come from K-State. He actually, and it's complicated, he had to stop at Rutgers as well. And that's how Delaware actually got him as well. Delaware actually had a staff connection along the way with Rutgers, and it worked out. And Delaware has recruited New Jersey very well at the high school level because Coach Carty has ties there. And so,
Sure.
It's a situation where Josh Youngblood has been one of the best additions. I'm glad you asked, and all these questions have been amazing, and I've been probably running my mouth too much.
No, no problem.
But Josh Youngblood has been a godsend for this Delaware team. He has been one of the best athletes on the field. He's a situation where they can really, I think, sprinkle him all over the place. He knows the book inside and out because he's gotten so many snaps. He's been really a player who's been willing Delaware at certain times on the field because, not because he's not talented in his own right, but because Delaware's gotten thin at wide receiver at certain times this year. And it's been Youngblood who's been a deep ball threat, which is what Delaware really loves. Jordan Townsend's that slot receiver who might not be as much of a deep ball threat as often, although he did have a long touchdown catch against Campbell early in that ball game. So Townsend can do it to you too. He can burn you too. But Josh Youngblood, he's going to be, I'm pretty sure he's going to be in the DC's mind all week.
Is Townsend, is he the one that has the brother that's the offensive lineman?
No, that's the tight end for Delaware, Braden Rhodes.
Yeah, he's good too, tight end. And then that number 54, I think, is just, I like to look at the offensive line.
Yes,
I would say he's the best offensive lineman they have.
No, I'm glad you brought up the O-line because Fenton Brose is number 54. Fenton Brose is the offensive lineman for Delaware. His brother, Braden Brose, is the tight end, and Braden Brose had an excellent game against Lafayette.
He had a really good game.
Right. I mean, you guys saw touchdown plays, right? And he caught balls that you don't talk about in traffic, right? And being a security blanket for Minicucci. Now, I will say Delaware's running backs did a nice job giving Minicucci a chance on some of those throws with picking up blitzes. And I was asking Coach Carty about that today, and it's an integral part of what Delaware is doing. And any running back needs to be able to do that. But I really thought it stood out for Delaware's the reserve running backs, not Yarns, who wasn't in the game, not criticizing him, he just wasn't in the game. And guys like Jonathan Silver and Quincy Watson, those running backs who are further down the depth chart who were making key blocks for Minicucci to find Braden Brose and to have the protection by Fenton Brose. The Brose brothers are a big part of Delaware. Really, one of the best stories on the team, right? To have brothers who are on the same side of the ball. And Fenton Brose is an interesting story because he's somebody who, and again, it's late at night in the East Coast, and I apologize to you guys. I should have everything mapped out probably. I want to say, and again, I'm the beat writer. Fenton Brose began as a defensive lineman.
Oh, okay.
You can check me on this. Fenton Brose began as a D lineman, and it was early on in his career. I believe he played in games as a D lineman, and this might have been in the time of the spring season, or at least several years ago. And eventually, he was converted to O line over the course of the years and positional need and that kind of thing. And he's become really one of the bedrocks of the offensive line.
We've seen a lot of that too. Journey Grimm, on our offensive line, or starting guard, was a D lineman. Yeah. And then opposite of that, Walker, who came from Nebraska, he was a D tackle at Nebraska, and now he's one of our best offensive tackles. So
sometimes it translates, and you give a lot of credit to the guys for, the techniques are a bit different and just a whole different way you're mentally going through the game in some ways. Now, if you're up front and you're physical on either side of the line, Luke, you would be able to, say this better than me. I'm a twig. I played flag football. eighth grade lead running back in rushing, 8th grade. But other than that, I've watched enough to know at least that the trenches, Fenton Brose has made it translate, and he's been really great for Delaware. And definitely his name should come up.
Yeah, well, and physical offensive lineman for sure. So
his brother, I really Braden, not even just with his catching ability, just with. He was really instrumental with some of the blocking, with how those running backs really got those holes, because he really solidified the end when they were blocking this last game in Lafayette. And then also just Jordan Townsend really caught my eye just with his ability to – he reminded me of a guy that we have in Bergen who plays slot as well and is a kick returner and punt returner. And so he kind of got my eye because he kind of has that flash, right? Where he catches it and you're like, okay, is he going to take it kind of thing?
Yeah.
So
you're exactly right, because you talk about the special teams returning. Jordan Townsend had a huge special teams return that catapulted Delaware to its first scoring play against Lafayette, right? So Jordan Townsend, he can do that. Delaware had really not broken off a big special teams play this season by and large until that return. And Townsend, he has that in him. He's been returning kicks for a long time for Delaware, especially with JoJo Bermudez hurt. You'll maybe see Townsend more on kick returns. I mean, Townsend's every punt return. You'll see Townsend back there for Delaware. Kick returns too, though. Townsend's going to be present there, especially when Delaware's banged up as it is now. And so Townsend's very dynamic. He's very dynamic. You're going to see Townsend go in motion a lot as a receiver. One of those receivers who's going to be motion. They might fake a pitch to him or give him a pitch and give him a sweep from time to time occasionally. And Jordan Townsend is electric. But Braden Brose, give him credit, because Brian Carty came out with the pedigree of not using tight ends as much in the passing game. It's a lot of times four wide receivers, 5 wide receivers on the field for Delaware. And, the tight ends, maybe they get lost in the shuffle. Maybe they don't get as much recognition or praise, because it's a team that, wants to have one tight end on the field at a time and maybe uses that as an extra blocking tight end, right? And so maybe the tight end doesn't get as many targets. But Braden Brose, when he's targeted, and when he is targeted, and when it's trending his way, and when he has the hot hand, which he usually does, he's very, very reliable. He is.
And he's hard to tackle. So.
What's that? Hard to tackle. Oh, yeah.
He looks like he's hard to tackle, too.
Bigger guy for sure.
Yeah. So, let's go into some defense. And did you have any other questions, Luke, for the offensive side of the ball?
No. As a defensive player, I look at a lot of the offense. The
So, your defense, a couple of guys in your linebacking crew kind of came off the page, and then also your defensive end. So your linebacker, Jackson Taylor, and then Chase McGowan, the defensive end, and then the Dylan Trainer, your linebacker as well. Those guys really came out and kind of I was like, wow, Jackson Taylor's got 97 tackles, 11 and a half tackles for loss, and 3.5 sacks. McGowan is really that pass rusher as well. He's got 5 sacks on the year with 14 tackles for loss. And I think that those guys, and with Dylan Trainer, are your guys that you kind of look for on the defense to kind of solidify that defense and kind of are all over the place.
He actually has 16 tackles for loss.
16? Sorry.
Yeah. Don't want to,
Sorry.
No, it's hard. These numbers are hard. I think Delaware's media staff is working on a few things this week. They might not have updated those stats all the way yet, because I think Jackson Taylor surpassed 100 tackles against Lafayette. I can be factual on that.
Okay.
But no, the point is, and again, I'm not trying to one up you. It's just the point is Jackson Taylor is really, really good. And this is a guy who's a grad transfer from Division II Westchester, which is, I'm just going to give the geography in the Mid-Atlantic, right across the Delaware PA border. Westchester is really right, in that neck of the woods. And he comes on a short drive from Westchester University to the University of Delaware, comes up from D2 to D1, and has been excellent. A real tackles machine for Delaware. Really nose for the ball, covers a lot of ground. Can be rushing the passer as well, but he's really anchoring the very heart of that Delaware defense, and he really fills the role of a Johnny Buchanan type, which Delaware's linebacker Johnny Buchanan in 2022 was another guy who was really tackles eater for Delaware, and I think Jackson Taylor plug and play was a blessing for Delaware from the transfer portal, because he proved he can play D1 pretty much right away. It was he had high expectations right away
this year too.
Yeah,
that's impressive.
And so Delaware's really happy with Jackson Taylor as well as Dylan Trainer, who Dylan Trainer had a brother, a Liam Trainer, who was starting ahead of him at that same position.
Oh wow!
The position that Dylan occupies now, his older brother Liam was playing, and Dylan's had it in for a long time. I think Dylan's one of those players that Delaware fans were really looking forward to seeing get those regular starting reps, because with the extra COVID year, and I know you guys have seen it in Montana, the eligibility and you have a backup with players who can get into the starting lineup, and older guys are there longer, and that's not. I'm sure you guys love having the vets there too at Montana as well.
Oh yeah.
But you have younger guys who are. They feel young, but they're actually old, because Dylan Trainer at this point, he's a veteran, but he hadn't got as many starting reps before this year. He just hadn't gotten them as much. He'd been one of the first guys in the rotation off of the reserves, but now Dylan Trainer is no doubt about it. Most every down linebacker, and he really is a guy who is a coach's son, Joe Trainer, coach. I want to say at Rhode Island as a head coach, and again, this is my midnight brain working.
Yeah.
Joe Trainer, Rhode Island as a head coach, and also I want to say spent time at Villanova as a coordinator.
Yeah, I think you're right. I recognize that name, Joe Trainer.
Yeah, Joe Trainer, and so and Coach Trainer, you can tell that both his sons, and Dylan included, since he's on the team right now, just absolutely. The kind of guys you want to have at linebacker, because the coach's son traits pay off. I mean, it's a guy who's Delaware turns to him. And again, this is the more abstract stuff, but when Delaware has a tough loss, there have been a few tough losses lately, media availability, Delaware will bring out Dylan Trainer, and he's going to be a guy who's a leader in the locker room and can speak in those difficult situations. And there have been a few of them. And Dylan Trainer is, a guy who's battle tested in that way, mentally tough and all those things, and physically tough as well from the way he plays. And up front, Chase McGowan, I know you mentioned him, just get to Chase McGowan, Delaware's best known edge rusher, a guy who is going to be probably the most circled one-on-one matchup on the defensive line. But Jack Hall's a guy who also is at the other end as an edge rusher who's strong. Keyshawn Hunter's in the nose guard of the D line for Delaware, that 3-man front. You'll see McGowan on one end, Keyshawn Hunter in the middle, and Jack Hall at the other end. Keyshawn Hunter in the middle is an ODU transfer, an FBS transfer who got Delaware a lot of needed physicality. If you're going to be in a 3-man front, you guys saw the 3-man front. You want to have a guy at the nose guard spot who's really going to be able to blow off blocks, right? And so Keyshawn Hunter can do that, but Chase McGowan is a guy who's going to be after the quarterback more than many. And he doesn't look overbearing in terms of size, but he's a classic edge rusher, right? He's got the speed. He has a lot of moves he can go to. And I think it's easy for Delaware to take him for granted, because he's a captain by now. He's been at the program for a number of years. And Delaware's hallmark, a criticism of Delaware, especially under its previous head coach, and even a little bit in maybe last season, it had been a question mark of rushing the passer. Where are the sacks? Where are the disruptive plays in the backfield? Chase McGowan is a big TFL guy, and Delaware's going to have to find creative ways to get him favorable matchups, because it's not going to be easy against Montana, but number 12, Chase McGowan, is the name.
He's a pretty big guy, still 6'1", 264.
Yeah, the way he wears it to me is like
the 230, 240 range. So
the way he wears it, he looks slimmer. And that's not a criticism. It's just like from watching him, he plays, he carries it really well.
Yeah. So, I've got another question, looking at the defense, where's a because I have an area where I think that they kind of lack, right? So if you had to pick one area where they lack on defense, where would you pick?
The right down the gut, right down the middle. So whether it's the delayed handoffs, or maybe the Delaware front gets beaten a little bit on blocks up the gut, and the delayed handoff creates a patient running back will be able to see through that. I think Jamar Curtis, I'm not butchering his name, right? Jamar Curtis for Lafayette, the running back, did really well with his patience as a runner and found holes, and in the first half was blown by Delaware. And that can be a weakness in the heart of the middle of the defense. Now, it's weird to say because Jackson Taylor is a linebacker in that spot, but they're asking linebackers to do a lot. There are 3 down linemen, and sometimes they're bringing a 4 and 5 man front. And if you guess wrong when you're bringing those 4 and 5s, you're going to get beat, right? And so I think Delaware's had some difficult calls. And Manny Rojas, I apologize to him before. He's a good DC, and Ryan Carty's going to keep him around. But the reason I brought up, maybe does Delaware think about, especially as it moved up to the FBS on Saturday, I was thinking maybe does it think about changing up the defensive looks and the whole scheme and the whole coordinator spot? Is that time and time again against high quality opponents, or against higher quality, against an Elon, against a Richmond in 2022, against a Villanova, the deeper pass plays down the seam and the running plays as Delaware tries to scramble in the middle of the defense and cover the middle of the field between the hashes, and especially those seam plays, maybe just outside the hashes. Those are spots that I think have been trouble spots for Delaware, and it shows up time and time again when Delaware's been on the field a little while longer, when offenses are pushing Delaware, when Delaware's having to spend longer time on the field. Delaware
I just feel for you, Daniel, because that was like us last year.
Our 2022 season.
Oh my gosh!
When you see Delaware play defense, let me know if it reminds you of. Now, if Delaware plays well, maybe it won't. Maybe it won't.
No, it does. I watched the whole Lafayette game, and I'm like, I think I've seen this team play. I'm like, wait, it was last year.
Yeah, wait, this team's wearing blue jerseys. Or black jerseys on Saturday? What the heck? Yeah. Well, what was your observation, Adam? What were you thinking? Because we might have been thinking differently, but
and I just thought the middle was alarming to me, but also. I don't know if they're young, but their cornerbacks were either just way too far out, or they were just giving a lot of room. And so when they would run up, the wide receivers would just run right by them. And so I didn't know if that was like strategy, but like the Lafayette missed a lot of deep passes, of deep passes.
I'm thrilled you mentioned that because that was going to be my next point. So we're on the same page with this. You guys are seeing it the same. And I watched the team all season. You guys obviously are, I know you guys have been doing a great job. I know about the podcast for a while, and I can tell you saw one game of Delaware, at least from Lafayette. You probably watched more by now. And it's just, you picked up on it right away. It's the corner spot for Delaware does have an injury. Tyron Herring, another one of those grad transfers for Delaware. He's a corner who's a transfer from Dartmouth College. And he followed Delaware's new corners coach, Carico Wright, to Delaware. The story was, Tyron Herring really wanted to play for Carico Wright, and Carico Wright leaves Furman and comes to Delaware. And now, Furman's had a great year despite all that. But but Coach Wright has been great for Delaware because he helped attract Tyron Herring and Khalil Dawsey, 2 Ivy League grad transfer corners. Khalil Dawsey came from Harvard. He's healthy on one end. On the other end, Tyron Herring was not healthy to end the regular season. To end Villanova, Tyron Herring was not healthy, and we did not see Tyron Herring against Lafayette. And so playing for him was another transfer, a younger transfer by the name of Corey Lyde, of the Wisconsin transfer, who was banged up at Wisconsin, didn't get to participate as much with the Badgers, but comes from New Jersey as well. And, comes from the same city in New Jersey as Delaware's legendary DB, Mike Adams, who played many years in the NFL, might remember the name, spent some time with the Broncos out that way. My layover's in Denver, so I have Denver on the mind when I get out to Missoula. But anyway, Mike Adams played for the Broncos, and Mike Adams came from the same city that Corey Lyde came from, the current cornerback for Delaware, Corey Lyde. And Corey's a sophomore, so he's younger than me. So I can totally understand, he was in a spot where he had to play more of a full game reps than he had played. He's rotating in. We'd seen him a lot. Corey Lyde had been in a lot of games for Delaware at the corner spot, number 26 for Delaware at the corner spot. But he had a bit of a tough time on that last Lafayette drive. That was a deep pass play that Lafayette pulled. Corey also, I want to say, was the player for Delaware who was out of position on that offsides that gave Lafayette a chance to score on 4th and goal. That gave Lafayette the lead. I think it was the lead late in the game. Again, I probably sound like I don't know what I'm talking about, but it's because I'm.
It's late over on the East Coast right now.
It's been a crazy day. It's been a crazy day.
And you've had a lot of stuff to report today.
Yeah, Corey Lyde. And I'm going to sound like I'm banging on him. I'm not, because he's played valuable snaps for Delaware as a younger player, and as a transfer, he's just gotten to UD and really gotten himself up to speed in camp. He's a guy who got himself up to speed, was coming off of his own injury rehab kind of thing, and he is a reliable piece for Delaware more times than not, but he had trouble in one-on-ones, and he wasn't just him. I think Delaware's corners were asked to do a lot. Maybe not Villanova. It was Villanova's scheme that was good too, but Lafayette's scheme did quite well in getting Delaware in spots where it was at risk of losing some one-on-one matchups, and Delaware did fall in some one-on-one matchups, and that included the corner spot. And the soft coverage by the corners is one of the reasons that I was tweeting about the DC's job. Now,
Right.
I keep banging on myself for that because I got ratioed in the end because the defense was actually very good in the second half after a Lafayette QB injury, and Delaware tightened up and made the comeback, and I deserved all the flack I got, and I ate my crow. But I still stand by the sense that I'm not sure Delaware is really built to defend the highest level teams, whether it's Montana, which is obviously a top 2 FCS team, or it's in the best FBS teams in the next few years because of the way the bend don't break coverage sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I know Delaware trusts its DBs. I know it trusts its takeaways, and it trusts its, timely TFLs at times, and it trusts its tackling linebackers. And Delaware has some really talented DB tacklers in space too. But gosh, there are a lot of completions with open yardage, and it's risky business against a talented team like Montana, or against Lafayette, or against Villanova, or against Elon. You can understand why that was my sentiment a little bit during the game against Lafayette, at least during the first half, because I don't think Delaware's going to change its ways. I think you're going to see Delaware play with a lot of cushion off the line.
When you don't get the pass rush that you're usually obviously getting, you can live and die by it. And so a lot of the passing, the middle, the deep routes, I feel that was us last year, and we've changed some things up this year with our defensive coordinator and defensive analysts. So which have been phenomenal for us. So but your defense, you're looking at pretty much 5th in the CA in rushing and passing, as if I'm looking at this, and then total yards. I kind of saw 5th to 6th to 7th kind of immediate route, kind of where you guys kind of landed. You guys do average, high 400s of passing or for total yardage. And so a lot of that team is offensive, and then that kind of bend don't break kind of defense as well.
It is, and I have to say it's very strange because we've been talking about Delaware's pass defense, and is it really all that? And is it, my question, it's a question, is it really all that? And then you look at some of the defensive efficiency numbers, the pass defense efficiency numbers, they're pretty good. So the efficiency comes into play where it's like, shoot, you are making timely stops and you're getting takeaways. The interceptions really help. Delaware's had a nose for the football with interceptions. Sure, there have been some favorable QB matchups Delaware's enjoyed too along the way. But I think it's weird because I shouldn't say weird. It's you give credit and you criticize, right? It's just an even-keeled approach, right? Credit is due to Delaware's talented secondary for its takeaways through the air and for the efficiency numbers that tell you that Delaware's defense is coming up with stops, but also not without falling behind in some cases. I mean, Delaware fell behind in New Hampshire 18-0 and came back in that one. And that saved Delaware's season. You lose to New Hampshire, you don't have a quality win. You're at 7-4 coming out of the CAA. 7 wins really, I didn't think was going to be enough in the CAA. And Delaware would be in a world of hurt having to go in the FBS without the momentum of having an appearance, having a first round win at home, all those things. Delaware would be in big trouble in that regard. And so Delaware's made comebacks this year, and Delaware got more fast starts against maybe lesser competition later in the year. So Delaware showed it can start games on a hot note, but I guess the better to above average quality teams, it's been more of Delaware has had a risk of falling behind in games. And that's not all the defense. The offense has sometimes settled into a play calling groove or an execution groove, or both, I should say, a little later in games if you want to. And it's high expectations. I mean, Ryan Carty's a former QB for Delaware. He was a backup QB on the 03 national championship team for Delaware. So locals around here will tell you the offense needs to be up here because it's just Carty's a well-known offensive name, and he has an aggressive offensive approach. He goes for a lot of 4th downs. He's aggressive. And so there are high expectations for this offense, and this offense hasn't always given the defense the best runway to start games, as was the case against Lafayette, where, and the defense is on the field for an eternity with those giveaways that Delaware committed.
So, one thing that I kind of wanted to go into, do you have anything in with the defense, Luke?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Special teams, like I tried figuring out who your field goal kicker was. It was kind of confusing to me because like multiple people have had field goal kicks, and in the Lafayette game, you have I think it was Alex Smoke that had the field goal kick, but he wasn't really the usual field goal kicker because Nate Reed, I believe, is like 7 for 10. Has kind of had a hard year this year. So who's the field goal kicker? Is it kind of trial by error, or what's that look like?
Awesome question to lead off special teams because it really is a committee in a sense. The hot hand is being ridden in a sense. Delaware's an offense that, for the reasons I described before, the short yardage hasn't been efficient for Delaware. Delaware goes for a lot of 4th downs in short yardage, so you're not kicking as many field goals in the red zone. And Delaware also, when it does score, it has a lot of explosive, and Coach Carter calls them explosive plays, and he's not the only coach who calls them that, but I'm just saying that I'll call them X plays on the broadcast. And so Delaware does a lot of that, so you don't attempt a lot of field goals if you're Delaware to begin with. And so that makes it harder to gauge who is the kicker. Well, really, it has been who's been making them reliably in games lately and how's practice been going and that kind of thing. And Alex Schmoke is the grad transfer from St. Francis University, who's the NEC champ who actually kicked at Delaware multiple times in over the course of his career. I mean, Alex Schmoke kicked at Delaware Stadium in, I want to say, a fall 2021 regular season game and the last season's postseason game before he even wore, like, he kicked in Delaware Stadium multiple times before he even put on Delaware's uniform, which is kind of funny,
wow.
right? Like he had experience kicking in Newark before he even was a home team player. And so he comes in at a high level of pedigree. And Nate Reed's a guy who transferred from D2 East Stroudsburg University, also from Pennsylvania, as East Stroudsburg. And Nate Reed actually had to take a year off from playing college football because of the timing of his transfer. He wasn't able to play competitively last season in 2022. So he committed, the timing of his commitment as a transfer, and he ended up making his debut here in 2023. And he's been a guy who I think maybe is even Delaware's better bet on long distance. Again, hard sample size. Alex Schmoke just clutched up for the game-winning kick against Lafayette on Saturday. So Alex Schmoke's very capable too. Right. You can see him go longer distance too. I have a feeling that if Delaware's first try is longer distance at Montana, you might see Nate Reed first, as long as he's healthy, which I think he is. But I say about every Delaware player now with the way, and everybody has injuries this late in the year, so people probably hear me say that. But Nate Reed and Alex Schmoke, don't be surprised if each gets one attempt. Don't be surprised if whoever kicks first and makes it kicks it again. If Delaware attempts it again, don't be surprised if there's a PAT miss, if they switch kickers, right? Like it's very much like, where's the hot potato falling here for Delaware? And so it's better. It's an improved position than it was in 2022. Excuse me. It's much improved than it was in 2022, Cardi's first year, but it's a bit spotty in some senses because you don't have an every kicker.
Yeah. So and one of these kickers, how well is their accuracy? Because one thing that I'm thinking is we have an amazing kick returner, punt returner in Junior Bergen, and if you are not accurate on where you're placing the ball, if you're let one hang too long, or if you are not being careful, something that looks like a touchback or something happens, he'll take it to the house, and he's done that multiple times. How good are these kickers with accuracy? Is it something that they have struggled with this year, or what's that look like?
Nate Reed had a good day with place kicking on kickoffs as far as touchbacks went in the Lafayette game. And then as it happened, his last kick in the Lafayette game as far as kickoffs went actually was one that they were trying to hook it towards the end zone and make it not returnable, and it goes out of bounds, right, as you guys saw, and it leads to. So, not to rag on him for that one play alone, but it was a difficult spot to have that happen to you. And I was watching Coach Cardi's reaction. He, you throw your hands up and you say, that's the time where we do that, the one time in the game. So, Delaware, you'll see Delaware strategically pop it up and try to get maybe an up back to return it at times. Maybe pop it up so that Delaware's counting on its kick return coverage to get there in time to make a play. I don't think Delaware's kick return coverage on punt or kickoff has been great this year. Delaware's had spots where return men are getting alleys for maybe 10, 15 yards at times, and it's imperfect. Now, the eye test tells me that it's not perfect for Delaware. The stats are probably a little better than my eye test is telling me. But I think Montana's going to be able to rip one off. Not maybe for a touchdown, but you're going to see, I think Montana's going to be able to get one off, because I don't know Delaware getting off the plane, long trip, playing back-to-back weeks, not making excuses. I can just kind of predict, cold weather, long trip. As the game goes on, or maybe early in the game, at some point along the way, I have a feeling Montana might not take one the distance. I wouldn't be shocked if they did. But I think the Grizz are going to be able to get one where it's good field position. You're going to say, oh, wow, what a return. And, that was blocked up beautifully. Or maybe Delaware missed one tackle here and there and on a return. And my prediction is that's going to happen once or twice.
Well, it always seems like in these playoff games, we get people kicking at him like, oh, we can defend him. And then it's like,
and what was that? Crap. And you guys will remember, was it did Southeastern Louisiana come to you guys in a playoff round a few years ago? And it was a big return.
Yeah. Sela came a couple years ago. Yeah.
Last year. What was it? Was it Flowers?
Blake Flowers. Yeah.
I was gonna say Flowers. I remember that name. Flowers was excellent, right, on those returns. I want to say, yeah.
We've been fortunate in our returners over the years.
Yeah, and I honestly, as an FCS fan, I love watching the games. I love seeing the place erupt on those big returns, right? I mean that. Yeah. And was there a return last year against? Was it SEMO?
Flowers as well. So
Flowers last year against SEMO. Yeah. Right.
Okay.
That was a fun game. Another night playoff game. The night playoff game, you're gonna love it when you're there. That atmosphere is something to see.
Well, and so we're scheduled to be, the word from your great SID, Eric, who's been coordinating with us so far.
Tabes, yep.
He let us know, we should be able to get set up, on the roof of the press box, get some coverage with the tent and everything. Cause I know, not many places in the FCS have student radio booths. And I was outside at SDSU last year, like South Dakota State had me outside. And so I can handle it. I'm not complaining at all. I'm just saying that I'm honestly rooting for some snow because I want to see the views from all that way up there, all high up there, the snow maybe falling. I don't know.
Right now it says about 28 to 30 degrees and cloudy. So
okay, maybe we won't get the precipitation. I'm rooting for it, honestly, because that'll be tough off the teams. But yeah, now I say that now. Ask me during the game, maybe I'll be like, oh no snow is great. So, but anyway, yeah, no, great atmosphere. And if kick return game gets up for Montana or punt return, and Delaware values special teams, but Delaware doesn't have a special teams coordinator either, right? So I just wonder sometimes about exactly how sound it is on certain snaps. And again, it's hard to be consistent every time, but I think it's something that's come up over the course of the year, and it's one of those maybe trouble spots for UD.
Yeah, ours is different because our head coach is our special teams coordinator.
There you go. Yeah, John Harbaugh type.
Yeah, exactly.
Very much like.
I would bring up the name out here. We just watched Ravens last night on campus. So Joe Flacco being a Raven when he came up.
So I was going to bring that up earlier. They were talking about Flacco earlier because they think that he may start for the Browns, which is as we all know, a famous Blue Hen. So
my childhood quarterback. Yeah, I catch a lot of slack. Oh, he's going to be done. My friends like, he should. I had people tell me tonight on campus, maybe he won't start. Maybe they should give PJ Walker a chance. And I was saying, well, they signed him for a reason. I mean, he played in the AFC North. Why not? But I'm biased. Don't ask me about that. I shouldn't even talk about Flacco. My bias will come through. That's my guy. I'll admit.
No, that's all right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as Adam back. Yeah. Anytime any FCS player makes the NFL, we root for all of them.
Yes, I'm with you.
I love rooting for all the FCS guys.
I'm right there with you. And Delaware is reportedly set to move up the fall after I graduate. So I don't know what this coming fall will look like for my senior year in 24. Maybe, and I don't not to bring up this convo again, but even beyond Delaware being the FCS, I'm gonna be watching and root for those FCS guys because I followed Craig Haley's bracketology as like a little kid. Like I was all into it, and Delaware did make a ton of appearances there for a little while for me. But it was a situation where I love the subdivision. I'm so glad that both the Grizz and those other guys in your state are in the subdivision, and the conference is great that you guys have. And I'm going to keep watching for sure. And those FCS guys, like you said, outstanding.
So that's one thing too that came out today. They're talking about elevating some of the games to ESPN. They haven't announced them. They're talking about 2 more possibly. I heard the SIU and Idaho game is going to get it, and then
I saw that Idaho.
With us being a night game, it very well could get that bump too. Plus,
I love that.
Anytime you can fill the stadium and it looks good on TV, they try to do that. So.
Yeah, most definitely. Wagers is going to look great. You guys deserve that spotlight. It's happened before, I know, and it should happen again. I'm pulling for that. And Delaware Stadium had a tough week with the Thanksgiving week. Wasn't exactly the greatest.
Wow.
I think they underreported. I was tweeting. I'm pretty sure underreporting keeps happening because I was there. Again, I'm not calling this through a blue and gold tinted glasses. I really think there were more than 4,000 people there on Saturday.
It sounded like it. There was a big crowd. It sounded like there was a lot of people there.
Well,
I guess Delaware might just some pennies together. What's that?
We have a hard time at the University of Montana on Thanksgiving weekend. It's like if you can get 12 to 14, that's your the good thing is usually the hardcore fans that are there are going to be nuts anyway. Right. So it's like, that's the one we want.
And that was the case for UD late in the game with that comeback for sure. So, but anyway, I know it's a little off topic, but as long as we're talking about the 2 programs, and these are 2 programs I know that are high up there in attendance and have the pedigree and the great traditions. And so, I'm glad this is happening before the move up for Delaware because this is kind of what I want to see in my lifetime. You want Delaware to be as a Delaware person, if you're a Delaware fan, and if you're covering Delaware, I got the chance to cover Delaware out here in Missoula. Really you want to have this kind of situation. Like this is part of the perks of the FCS. For all the conference talk, this is what you want to see. So I appreciate it so much, the opportunity.
Well, I always thought they should do some type of like a home and home series because we know we did that with Appalachian State.
Well, that
1 year.
We did it with Hofstra where they came out. I mean, Hofstra's not around, but we had Hofstra come out and then we went there, and that was awesome because none of us Montana kids ever been to New York City, so we went a few days early and got to visit like Times Square and see all that stuff.
That's awesome.
So that was really cool. So again, the perks you get with FCS football.
Now, I was just at Hofstra earlier this fall with a non-football coverage, actually a men's soccer conference tournament, actually. And Hofstra is very close to the city. I didn't realize how close it was. I'd only been to Stony Brook. I'd been to Stony Brook, as you know, from football that you just went over at. But I'd not been to Hofstra yet, and that's not far from the city. So I'm glad you guys are able to get out there.
It's not at all. So
Well, any other questions, Luke?
No. I just want to say, Daniel, I really appreciate you taking the time, even though it's really late over there.
Good.
But college students, you have a lot more energy than like those of us older guys. But,
your listeners are going to want to listen to this.
Having you on here tonight, and I just want to say I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. And I'll just say your listeners are probably going to want to turn this down at like 0.5 speed. I know I go pretty quickly. I get excited. I jam a lot in there, and it's hard to maybe listen to me for the first time. So I apologize in advance for that.
No,
I appreciate your kind words.
Yeah, it's amazing. You've had a busy week or a busy day, but it's just crazy how one of my last questions is, do you think that if they don't get this win against Lafayette, do they get that invite?
Yeah.
You think so?
It would be a bit premature and knee-jerkish to say that based on one on-field result, all of a sudden the invite gets pulled. Conference USA has a reputation where I have a feeling they're not done, and they're going to be looking at other FCS call-ups too. And so I kind of doubt that, but the perception, the PR would have been way harder on everybody at UD. So and the Twitter replies and everything, this makes it much easier. But now Montana's gonna have something to say about that, because Montana has something up its sleeve, I know, and it could get out of hand as a 2 seed, hosting Delaware. And so we'll see how it shakes out. But yeah, Delaware's very glad it won. Delaware's very glad it won for more reasons than one, and not just this year. Yeah, you make a good point, Adam.
Yeah. Well, Daniel, I can't thank you enough, spending some time with us on your busy day, but thank you for being with us. And, Grizz Nation, if you see Daniel around at Missoula, buy him a beer and some food or something like that. And
we'll say, just
show him around.
First birthday on Saturday, so please do. But
there you go. 21 on Saturday.
Maybe post game, so that I don't want WVD to hear that. I can't do a pre-game with my broadcast coming up. But post game, I'll be staying in Missoula post game. So
head down there to the Missoula Club, the Mo Club, or Stocks, and people.
There you go.
They'll buy you. They'll buy you.
Awesome. Those are recommendations. Sounds good. Sounds good for sure. Yeah. Well, we're flying into another location in Montana that I won't mention. I won't specify, but we're going to drive to Missoula as soon as possible.
There you go.
It's a nice drive.
Yeah,
so.
It is a nice drive.
There you go.
Yep. All right, man. Well, thanks for having us or spending some time with us, man.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yep. All right. Thanks, Daniel.
We'll see you later, Daniel. All right. Well, that was really cool. Getting Delaware on there. Yeah. I mean, I didn't think we were going to get him, and he came on, and that was really insightful just hearing his stuff. So,
yeah, I think, it's good to see a perspective from where, we don't, I usually just look at the Big Sky teams.
Yeah.
I'll look at some Missouri Valley teams once in a while if there's no football on, but I don't watch too much CAA. I know the team, but I don't know about them. And so having kind of someone that knows the team.
And the CAA, I mean, that used to be the conference. I mean, before the Missouri Valley and the Big Sky became what they are, that was the conference, But a lot of those teams you rattle off are all in the Sun Belt now. So
exactly.
It doesn't surprise me that Delaware's leaving. I would call them an older blue blood is what I guess I would call them. But yeah, that was cool just getting his perspective and stuff.
Exactly. We kind of went over Delaware, guys, and we kind of just wanted to kind of go over, what we thought the keys of the game are. We had some people that kind of had some questions, and so we kind of wanted to go through there. And then, also predictions, because I'm down by 2.
So we were talking, and I didn't want to bring this up to him when he was on there because I didn't want to talk trash about his guys. And it's not really talking trash too bad.
Yeah.
We have Mr. Gubbs, who I love out there, who's just wrecking ball. And I was watching number 55, their center, and that boy stands up a lot. I think it's going to be a long day for the Delaware Blue Hens center 55. I think Gubbs is going to spend the day in the backfield.
Yeah.
If I'm 55, I'm nervous coming to this game. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot of double teams with that guards coming down, and which is going to free up our backers. Because look at Gubbs. He had 1 tackle in the MSU game.
One huge tackle.
Yeah, 1 huge tackle.
Oh my gosh.
Obviously, but I mean that's it. He does his job so well and just such a dominant force, and I think he has the opportunity to really dominate here. Yeah,
so. I totally think that's correct too. They're big. Their offensive linemen, I think that on the broadcast that I watched, they average about 310.
Sure.
But the mobility, I kind of question of how mobile they are.
Yeah.
Just because, Lafayette, they did have 35 team tackles this year, and they were kind of getting to their quarterback. He is running around. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. They do run the ball pretty well. But they're
21's good, but
21's good, but we don't know if he's going to be
that run. And boy, good luck to their quarterback.
I can't imagine a true freshman having your first start and doing what he did, and then coming back and then coming here.
They're going to have the smelling blood in the water already.
Oh my Lord!
Just licking their chops, going, all right, let's introduce this young man to Washington, and then so them moving up to the FBS. I can just hear Bobby. Let's give them the send-off they deserve.
Oh, yeah.
Go to the FBS, and just beat that crap out of them. So
well, and I had a prediction before that, and now I'm like,
I've got my prediction written down, baby, and it's
I did my prediction a couple nights ago when I was doing research, and then all of a sudden, they're leaving for the FBS, and I'm like, do I want to change it? Because
you still have time to change it. You haven't made it known yet.
So it's interesting to see that. But what are the keys of the game, Luke, that you're looking for?
So I think on offense, like we talked about with Daniel, it's running up the middle, because they have that 3-3-5, but they really put their DNs out in that like 5-6 techniques. And so if we can dominate that center and create lanes, I mean, we can gash them in the run game, especially because we talked about, reminds us our old 3-3-5, where if they're overcommitting, getting out of their lanes, boy, you can get them. And then too, the corners and stuff, the way Clifton's throwing the ball now, I think we're going to see a lot of offense.
I do think we're going to see a lot of offense too.
And I think on defense, I mean, as much as they turn the ball over, and the freshman quarterback, and bless his heart, he's never played in front of a night crowd at Washington Grizzly. That's going to be nuts and loud, and he may fold. I don't know this kid, but it's hard for most quarterbacks that are used to Washington Grizzly to deal with that. So good luck, young man.
Yeah, and I don't expect a sellout by any means, just because it's a night game, and it's also you're still probably
they're crazy.
Yeah, there's still going to be 18,000-20,000, I think, that are going to be there.
And it's the 18 or 20,000 people that care and know when to yell and when not to yell. It's not the people there for the social aspect. They're there because they love the Montana Grizzlies, and they want to cheer and scream and go nuts. And like last year at that SEMO game, there was open seats in the south end zone, but it was freaking loud as hell, and everybody was going crazy. We didn't sit the whole game. We're jumping around and screaming, and it was just a nuts crowd. And that's what I think we're going to see this weekend.
I think so too. Yeah, I think getting pressure on the QB and making him uncomfortable, I think that's going to happen. Like you said, running up the middle is going to be even more effective, but I just think that the quick slots to Bergen and getting those wide receivers involved, I just don't know how we don't, and I don't want to knock on wood, I don't see how we don't score over 30 points in this game.
Well, I think we're going to score a lot. And then you were just saying, getting over the top of the Bergen and stuff, what that's going to do is going to open up the run game for Clifton.
Oh yeah.
That play action pass game in the opposite, where they think, he's going to go, and boom, all of a sudden he's running, like the draw play and stuff. Yeah, that could be huge. We could see some big runs from Clifton.
Well, and I also think that one of the guys that does not get the accolades, that I think he does get the accolades but gets overlooked, is Eli. Right? He is so patient back there. The Lafayette running back was so patient back there as well when I was watching him play Delaware. He was 10 yards at a time. So
have you noticed how that's changed over there?
Oh yeah.
Go back to some of our first pods. I was talking about how Eli wasn't patient. I was like, he's hitting the hole too fast.
Yeah.
Not no more.
No.
When to slow it up, that the hole opens and boom, he hits it. He hits it so fast. I mean, the guy is it's amazing, the development and how much he's progressed just in 1 year. That's why he should be a very nice award winner.
Yep. So I think it's gonna be a great game. Can't wait till Saturday at 7. So So we have got some predictions. You want to do predictions first or questions?
So I was going to say, let's do predictions. And if you don't mind, I was going to jump on kind of our top of the FCS bracket challenge.
Oh yeah, definitely. And
announce some of those names right now. I put it out there on Twitter and Facebook, but I thought we'd just say some of those names and kind of tell everybody where they're sitting.
And guys, you got to give, if you see Luke on Twitter or Facebook, like definitely give him a what's up or a good job, because this is all Luke. He's put this together. He's done a great job.
I've always wanted to do an FCS bracket, and it's a lot of work, but I'm like, I dig it, man. Like seeing all the brackets, see where people are coming in. I made my own spreadsheet and stuff. I was just like,
your big board.
It was giving me crap. They're like, Brent would have this up already. I was like,
oh, I know.
I had COVID I've got COVID right now. And it's crap over the weekend. I was like, there's 52 brackets is what we got. So I'm impressed. Like
pushing it through.
I was pumped that we got 52, because when I started this, I was like, well, if we get like 20, that'll be awesome. So the fact that we got 52, I think that's pretty awesome.
Well, and there's some other places that are doing those brackets too. So the 52 that started with us are with us, we're glad you're with us. So
yeah. So since we're talking about, let me just give the
Yeah.
tops right now. So we did have 2 perfect brackets. Justin Bertram had 8 right, and then the other one was Tad Brendan. He had 8 right as well.
Oh wow.
There's a whole lot of 5s. I'm in the 5 range.
That would be my team.
There's a bunch of 7. Zach Lord, Shane Eddington's a 7, Ross Flatiger's a 7, Linda Cockhill's a 7, Jordan Whitmire's a 7, Eric Schmidt's got 7. And that looks like it. The rest of us are hanging in those 6s and 5 range. There's a few 3 or 4s, but this is progressive. Next round's worth 4 points to win. Then 8, 16, 32. So you never know. You're still in it.
You're still in it.
Thanks everybody for participating. I'll get them the standings out as fast as I can once the games are all over this weekend.
Oh well, thank you, Luke. I appreciate you a lot, man, for doing that. So
my pleasure.
Predictions, man. What do you got?
Okay, so as I've done all season, Versus app, they have us ranked at 3 still.
3?
So, yeah, they have us at 3.
Wow.
They have South Dakota State and USD above us, then us at 3 is what Versus has. But whatever.
Okay.
They predict a Grizz win over Delaware, 27-15 is what Versus has.
27-15?
Yeah. So, again, they've been wrong all season.
Yeah.
So in this case, I think that they're wrong they've predicted the score as far as the points that the Grizz will score and the points that Delaware will score on us wrong. So my prediction is this. I have the Grizz winning 42-10.
Oh.
I think we're going to smoke them. And I think part of me, when I put 10 down, I was like, is that too much? Should I put 3 or maybe 7? Maybe 6, just too few. Our defense is playing lights out.
I know, right?
I apologize to the defense. I'm giving them 10 because, maybe they run one back. I feel bad about the freaking special teams then. So I don't know if they can get 10, but I got 42-10.
Okay.
What do you got?
Oh man, I'm gonna stick with my score. I got 34-10.
34-10. All right.
Yeah. So
all right.
I keep on going back to that 10 too. Like
that's
gonna be a hard 10. They've only let 24 points in the last 4 games.
That's why I feel like I'm like bashing our defense by saying they can score 10. So I had a football coach of mine used to say, you shouldn't let them get more than 17. He goes, they're probably going to get an offensive touchdown, and there's probably going to be some other weird touchdown, whether it's special teams or someone quarterback throwing a stupid pick or something, and then there used to be a field goal. So he goes, but they shouldn't be able to ever get more than 17. His theory was always.
Oh man. Let's get to some questions, man. We had a lot of great questions, and guys, thank you for responding to us. Let me find them here. I tried to send them over to you, Luke, so that you could see them before.
Yeah, I saw. I was reading through a few of them, especially our friend up in Alaska there. Talking about the playoff game. I made sure I had that.
Yeah.
So
the first one here I got is from Brian Legreed. I think it's earn your turns. Assuming we get to the point. Sorry, my thing keeps on going. Would you rather we whip the Scats twice in a season, or get some revenge on NDSU for our prior postseason woes in Fargo?
So I feel like this is the revenge tour, and that's why this weekend we need revenge on Delaware from that 93 loss, because that was BS back then. Dickinson should have won that game. So for me, we've already piss pounded the Cats. I'd rather get revenge on North Dakota State in our house again, because you know what? We've gone up there a few times and they've had their way with us. And as you talked about, you had Eli on here. He'd love to have his way with us.
Oh, man.
And I know Bobby would too. So it's like, let's keep the revenge tour going. I want to see North Dakota State beat up on the Kitties and have them come meet us in Washington Grizzly and us kick their ass.
Yeah. I think that would be I want to beat up on NDSU. I've wanted to for so long. So the dark side of the force. So, but yeah, I totally agree with you, Luke.
We used to be the evil empire, and then they became. We need to get that title back.
Exactly. Rickson's dad's at J Sunk-Hild. Playoff time is an anxious, nervous, fun time. But would you guys agree we have gained so much composure and confidence at all three levels that we will continue to roll this weekend? Something feels special about this year. Yeah, I say the last 4 weeks. It's more consistent this year. Everything is more consistent. It's not just sparingly. And each week we've gotten better. One thing on is I just want to keep on building, or what Clifton says, keep on stacking, right?
Yeah, keep stacking.
So I don't think we've seen the best yet. I'm not saying that the neighbor game wasn't great, and it was pretty close.
Yeah, exactly.
But I still think there's a couple different things that we could do that we could be at our top. And you don't ever want to be just at your top at the beginning of the year. It's always at the end of the year. So I think
you said it perfectly. We're peaking at the right time. We just kept getting better in November. Well, in December here, we're just going to keep doing that. And I feel like this team is super focused. Like I said, we went to the Grizz walk when the players were walking in. Holy cow, the laser focus that a lot of them had, it was just like, wow. I mean, yes, there's the rivalry game, but I mean, I think that they're just so focused on, we have a mission. We've completed our goals for the regular season. Done. Now let's go complete our goals for the postseason. It all starts with a win against Delaware.
Let's see here. Bridger at B. Dean Lord wants to do a PSA playoff reminder that there will be not as many people there, and that is how it always has been. Please remind people not to freak out when there's 14 to 16 people at the game, because those are the ones that are the diehards that want to be there.
Exactly. That's exactly what we just said. It's like those are the crazy ones that are out there just wreaking havoc. By the way, Bridger has 5 right after the first round.
Okay, and then it says plus it will be a night game. It will be great. He kind of went off on a rampage there, which then he gets to his question. So, Bridger, thank you for the questions, and thank you for letting us know about that. We all know that. And also, one thing that one of my friends said is hunting season's over. So, there won't be that influx of people gone as well. And so I think that's going to be something that's kind of good too.
Students are back too from Thanksgiving break. I mean, it's like that game after Thanksgiving is always a much more highly attended game. So that's why I like what Daniel was talking about. Like, you saw, I think North Dakota State only had 7,000 people or something. That Thanksgiving weekend game is always a brutal one because so many people are out of town. So,
and NDSU has, like, not to rag on NDSU, but their attendance has been going down drastically.
Dropping a lot because a lot of their fans, I saw a lot of them pissed off today when they see Delaware moving up. They're like, why not us? So,
Well, and then the CUSA or Conference USA, I always want to say CUSA, but Conference USA, I believe at one time was kind of interested in NDSU, but I don't know if you're NDSU, you do not want the Conference USA. That's so spread out.
You got to think of other sports too. It's not just football.
So,
that would be killer for the other sports. Fargo.
Bridger does ask, where does Delaware stack up? So, Bridger, sorry to reference your question. I did remember your question when we had Daniel on, and so I kind of wanted to kind of throw that in there because I knew it was your question. So, so it was Bridger's question that later on in the podcast, but he basically says, where does Delaware stack up in the history of FCS Blue Blood programs? I wouldn't say they're to the point of NDSU. I wouldn't say that they're to the point of us. I think there's really 2 levels, right? You've got NDSU, you've got us, you've got JMU, you've got, I would even say Youngstown State is ahead of them because in their earlier years, they were pretty good as well.
I would put Delaware in the same vein as like your Villanovas. The programs like that. I mean, it's like you and I maybe. I mean, I don't know. I mean, UNI's always seems to make their way in. They didn't this year, but it's they used to be, but then they had some quiet years. But anytime you get a starting quarterback too, like Joe Flacco for many years, it kind of gives your your program a little more visibility. So
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a hard place to put where they would be, but I think that those were, Luke, I think you threw out some good names as well.
Once JMU left the CAA, Delaware and Villanova are kind of the top schools there all of a sudden.
Well, yeah. Now that Delaware is leaving, you've got Villanova.
Mm-hmm.
You've got, who else you got there?
Richmond, I believe.
Richmond.
Yeah. So
I mean, William Albany, which is a new one. They're in the playoffs this year.
New Hampshire, I think, used to be kind of one of those teams.
Oh yeah,
for too. But the CAA just isn't what the CAA used to be, and that's the thing that I'm excited for the Montana to represent the Big Sky this weekend and show the nation that the CAA isn't it. It's Missouri Valley and the Big Sky. Vying for the two top conferences every year now.
It is. Southeast AK Grizz. Do you have a favorite Grizz playoff moment / game and or memory?
Did you see his? I was gonna read it here.
Oh yeah, you want to read his?
Yeah.
Okay.
His is a good one.
Yeah.
So it's gonna take me a second to find.
You want me to get it? I have it right here.
Oh, okay.
So his says, mine is 2009 SDSU. I was living in South Dakota. Every Monday morning, I would give a Grizz update at work. My boss told me that the Grizz weren't good because they played in the Big Sky. During the SDSU game, I was driving from Idaho back to South Dakota listening to the game on the radio. The Grizz were losing so bad, I had to change the station. Later, I was heading down Homestake Pass. I dialed back to the game to check to see how bad the loss was. I found the station right as the Grizz scored and were down by a touchdown. I got to listen to the rest of the game, the rest of the comeback. It felt so good to walk into work Monday morning after beating SDSU and tease my boss about the team that is only good because they play in the Big Sky. So
that's awesome.
That is awesome.
That one brings back a good memory because I was living in South Dakota at the time, and my dad and I were watching that game, and it's over Thanksgiving weekend. He goes upstairs like, it's over. And as soon as he goes upstairs, I'm like, Mariana just ran one back. Get back down here. And then it just proceeded from there. So that's
awesome.
Great. What's yours, Adam?
It's actually that same year. It is the 2009 national semifinal game against Appalachian State.
Nice.
My best friend and I, we made it a road trip. That game got pulled over in Bozeman.
Of course.
And going too fast, and my friend offered the cop a donut, which thought it was not good. We were all in our Grizz stuff, and he's like, "You guys better get going." And so didn't get a ticket, got a warning, got there, and it was cold one. And then as the game got farther into it, it got into blizzard like atmosphere, and we were so cold, but we just kept on jumping around. I have the NCAA tape where you could buy those games, where they used to sell those games.
Oh yeah.
And I have it. I've watched it a couple times. The epic hit that just leveled the App State guy.
Yeah.
And then just to see during the timeouts, the yard people just go through the snow and shovel off the yard markers. And then this lady that we were sitting by, she could tell that we were so cold that she had extra hand warmers, and she gave them to us. And we're like, oh my gosh, thank you. And it was amazing. That game was the loudest I have heard Washington Grizzly Stadium. That neighbor game this year was pretty loud.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie, that was pretty loud. But that 2000 national semifinal game against App State, who was, I believe, back-to-back national champions that year. We were, I believe, we were like number one, but they were favored in that game coming to us, I believe. It was a great game.
Yeah, that's an epic one for sure, with the snow and App State, again, the two top programs back then.
Yeah.
I think we'd won 100 and some games, and they'd won about the same over that period of time. And yeah, that was a pretty good one. So mine is also against App State.
Okay.
Actually, back I was on the sidelines. Grizz are on offense. It's overtime. It's the 2000 playing App State for a chance to go to the national title. And Drew Miller hits Jimmy Ferris in the end zone for a touchdown. I think it was like a 15-yard touchdown pass. And that was the loudest I'd ever heard that stadium. It went just nuts. You couldn't hear anything on the sidelines. Like Ferris gets picked up. I mean, it was just mayhem. I think the goalposts got ripped down and stuff. I mean, it was just because we had, 95, we won it. 96, we went back and lost it.
Yep.
And so 2000, here we're going. Drew Miller, Jimmy Ferris, we're heading to Chattanooga. And unfortunately, Adrian Peterson, not that Adrian Peterson, the other one, took us to town when we got up there and we didn't win it. But then we went back and won it the next year against Furman. So, But that's my favorite playoff memory is seeing all of us on the sidelines just praying that, Drew pulls this off and he hits Jimmy Ferris, who's one of the greatest Grizz wide receivers ever, also has a Super Bowl ring, in the end zone for a touchdown. Just, it was awesome. So
that's awesome. That is awesome.
Great question.
Exactly.
Alaska buddy.
So we've got some more questions here on eGrizz. Okay. So SoCal Surfer, I feel this should be a blowout win for the Grizz. Delaware is down to their third QB and their second string wide receivers for some DL personnel. They have a huge injury bug. What do you guys make of it? Is this a revenge game in your opinion? I think we kind of answered that and said, that is.
Mm-hmm. We're definitely going to make it into a revenge game.
Oh, yeah.
But, like we heard Daniel say, there is a ton of injuries. Like he said, that bug has hit their team hard.
Yeah.
And that can be, we've seen it ourselves. Yep. From him talking like about how their defense plays, everything they've got, I'm like, was this is us last year is what it sounds like. I'm like, this sounds like us last year, and have those 2 losses at the end of the season and they make the playoff, they win, and now they've got to come to see us. That's what it sounds like. It really sounds a lot like our season last year. So
it does. It really does. He also says here, Grizz fans on eGrizz have been very quiet this week. Just a comment. I don't think it matters. I just think that they've kind of sleeping right now just because content hasn't come out really.
Yeah.
And so I think that it will.
I bet today it blew up with the whole Delaware FBS and stuff.
Oh yeah, I definitely think so too. Benjamin Dover, could you please just give me a shout out? And this is that. No, I'm not going to give him a shout out. I believe this guy is a Cat fan.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so sorry, dude. No, because I looked at some of his posts and it's like, no, I'm not going to do it. What are your thoughts on a freshman QB coming into Grizz and be asked to lead the team to a victory? And that is by Putter.
I think super advantageous for us.
Oh man,
good luck.
If he can play well enough for them to be in the game, that I think they've got a quarterback.
Yeah.
But
the way our defense is like just teeing off on people and playing nasty and just feeding off each other, we start hitting him. Oh, it's gonna be a long day.
And there's just a discrepancy. I'm sorry, Lafayette and Delaware. When I was watching that game, there's a difference between how our team is playing and their team.
Yeah, it was ugly, man. I mean, Delaware should have lost that game, and Lafayette ended up losing after getting all those turnovers and stuff. But this is a different pedigree of football, and like I said, that poor center doesn't know what he's got coming for Gubbs. Gubbs is going to blow him up and be in the get backfield all day, even if they put 2 on him. Hell, put 3 on him. And then you know what's going to happen? Gubbs going to take all 3, and Braxton Hill and Janicaro and freaking Wilson are going to come around and just pound on this guy. Not to mention Edwards. I mean, it's if you're a defensive player, you're going, oh yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait to get a piece of these guys.
Yeah. Montana guy, care to break down the upcoming neighbor NDSU game a bit as it affects our future? I don't really think that it affects our future yet because we've got this game ahead of us, and then we've got to play the winner of Furman and I forgot the other team. So before we even worry about that game, I know what I have rooting favor of who I want to see. I want to see NDSU before I want to see the neighbors.
Yeah.
For that revenge tour, but
so
I just before they're ahead of us, it's hard to talk about.
Well, I just did this just for his listening sake. I ran the versus simulation, and it has Montana State winning 32-31. So versus doesn't know either. It's got him right there.
That's a close game.
So yeah, it actually has NDSU ranked higher than Montana State overall at 67 versus 80. So I think it's going to be a wild game. So yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how they travel. NDSU travels.
Yeah.
But also, I believe that Marty Morningwig is going to be at that game because his son coaches on the NDSU team. So
I bet you're right.
So I think he'll be at that game cheering loud. So
root for NDSU against the Cats.
There you go.
Our boy Marty Morningwig's kids are coaching for him.
So. Exactly. So last question here, Lone Grizz. How do we make sure we capitalize on the momentum we have created this season, i.e. recruiting, transfer portal, NIL? And then he goes on, you and Luke have mentioned a number of times on the pod that you have noticed some subtle changes in Coach Houck and loosening the reins a bit on players, celebrating and really having fun. Yeah. How do we get that out to potential recruits, boosters, and help the program take the next step to start like a run like NDSU went on? In my opinion, we have the players, the facilities, fan support, and tradition to really go on a run in the next few years. Would just like your thoughts on that.
So, one thing I want to talk about is QB Club, which I'm in. We've never seen higher numbers.
Yep.
And if you want to see a different side of Coach Houck, join QB Club.
Yeah.
It's totally different than you see in the media. You get to hear more of his personal thoughts. He breaks film down. It's awesome. I love it. It's worth the money. There's other perks and stuff too you get. You get a nice jacket too, but it's just cool getting to hear that.
Oh yeah.
And that's all that money. I mean, I guess pretty much you're a booster. It's all going back to the program and stuff. Yeah. So that stuff's all looking good. Plus we've got the bubble that I don't think is going to be ready this year yet. But it'll be soon and we'll have it for next year. So we got that coming up. I mean, there's all these rumors about stadium enhancements, and not necessarily adding more seats, but hearing rumors adding to the press side and maybe more boxes up above there or something.
Yeah.
So
I've heard the press side of it is kind of
it's bad.
It's bad. I think Marty had said something on Coulter Nuanez about how it was so
I've
horrible.
been up there. I mean, where Riley and Greg sit, it's a tiny little box.
Yeah.
The biggest room in there is the coaches, our coaches, and then the opposing coach, they're in a tiny box too, which is purposely done. But it's those are things that we need upgraded. But I mean, we're there to make those. It's just, what's interesting is going to happen in the year, I think, is what does Houck do? That's still the big question mark. He, to me, I don't think he's going anywhere. He's having so much fun coaching football, with all these guys. Plus, he's got all these recruits that are now developing. You got your Eli Gilmans and your Ayats of the world that are just so young and are coming up. And it's
Riley Wilson.
Riley Wilson. He's just that guy's going to be a monster.
Yeah,
he already is a monster. And so it's as a coach, you like seeing these kids develop and progress. And for Houck too. If he keeps winning, you're going to make that record so untouchable.
Yeah.
How cool would that be too? So, And then as far as NIL, we've had our Weedia, the good old Grizzlies on here, but if you want to listen to that, I haven't listened to it yet, but Grizz Fan Pod's got Wellnell talking about the new NIL stuff too. So we're going to give it a listen, give them a listen too, just because they'll break down that stuff more too. So
and I think all that thing. Well, and I think they got kind of didn't they join with a NIL isn't it like influencer or something like that?
Something. Like that.
I'm not too fond of it. I need to listen to something. So
there's still stuff that we got to be careful with because we talked a lot last week with Clifton shirts.
Yeah.
We have some posers out there that are making it look like we're supporting him when we're not actually. Now, I did get an email from one of the gals that's helping Clifton. And I think she said they sold 191 shirts, way more than they ever bought. and they just couldn't believe it blew up like that. And so they're like, it's going to be a little bit longer than we thought to get you your shirts, but they're coming.
That's awesome.
That's way cool. I was pumped to hear that.
That's awesome. Well, and I'm glad that we kind of spotted it too, where we could do what we could and get out the word to Grizz Nation to kind of, that's just so horrible. Like,
it's BS.
Stealing from some college students where they don't get paid, they're working hard and this is something new that they can do. It's something that we're going to have to be in the sports world more watchful for as well. So,
this is a different way to do it when they're making their own shirt stuff, that they're just promoting themselves, and have someone else steal that out from underneath them. That's just wrong.
Exactly. With recruiting wise, this next game is a recruiting game. A lot of the recruits that we have recruiting visits for this game, December 2nd. And so, if, Grizz and the Grizz were able to get this to be a ESPN or ESPN2 or ESPNU game, that's just more eyes too. I think that this year, us being a number 2 seed, is getting more eyes to us. If we make it, hopefully, knock on wood, to Frisco, that helps, get more eyes on you. I think that, winning always helps.
Winning always.
It's always just, it's interesting because, you're battling the neighbors, which the neighbors have, if you want to be honest, the last couple of years, they've won the state, right?
They've done well. Well, I mean, we've had more, but they've done well in the state. But
yeah, they've done well in the state. But that
North Dakota State to knock them off, then they're out, and people aren't focusing on them. The Grizz are still in there. If we can keep winning while they're out, that always benefits you in recruiting.
Yeah, and not only just winning the state, but just also just winning the narrative, right? Winning how they do things and how things, like what we've said, like this year kind of has switched on how some things were done, and it's refreshing. I think we still need to kind of change a couple different things to make it a little bit more interactive and just, freshen things up where it's not as just stuck in the old ages a little bit, and just kind of take back some of that momentum from the neighbors. I don't think it's not going to be like the old days where we're the only football team, right? It's not going to be that. The Cats, neighbors, whatever you want to call them, Scats, whatever, they're going to be here for a little bit just because they've got some things going for them. They do. Now, does that harness with some rumors of maybe their coaching staff leaving?
Yeah, we've been hearing vegan to New Mexico. Maybe he's been doing
New Mexico, Boise State,
all sorts of different things.
So it's kind of be interesting to see what happens. Do they take a step back with that? Do we get transfers from them? Where I think a lot of it is to kind of see some of these legacy people not go to the Grizz where we've had those, but we've also, if you want to look at that, we the biggest one that I think we got Bergen from them.
Yeah, we did.
We switched his commitment.
Yeah,
and just imagine if we didn't.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, we got Bergen. Awesome. But that's with the recruiting too. That's also why I want to play NDSU.
Yeah.
Beating the Cats twice. That's great. I'd love to kick their ass again. But really, in the long game here, having NDSU come in and us beating them, that actually helps us with recruiting too, right there.
Yep.
Because we got Eli to flip. I mean, I don't know if he really flipped, but NDSU wasn't given the time of day, and we were right there courting him. So, and thank goodness we have him too. So,
well, and Eli was something where he was getting some other interest from other, South Dakota State. I think he was going after him, but he fell in love with an area and he fell in love with the coaching staff. He's really coached close to Coach Green, and so I think he's had some family here in Montana as well. So I think that kind of solidified it and just how we do things too as well. So, but yeah, I think that. I think it's a slow trickle, right? You kind of build off what you're building, and each week I think is another week to kind of build on it.
Yep, I agree.
So, great question. I know that there's going to be more types of those questions as we get closer to the end of the season, just because those final season questions. You kind of look at the season in perspective of the coaches and recruiting, and we'll definitely do a podcast on all that, guys, when the season is done. We've had some great questions. What's that? Yeah, we've had some great questions, great emails from people. We haven't forgot about your questions. And so make sure you keep on sending those. We love the interaction. I love people coming out and saying how thankful that they are for our podcast. And there's just how much interaction we're getting. Make sure, guys, if you listen to us on Apple, make sure you rate, review, and subscribe to us. Right now, I think we have like 31 people have rated and reviewed us, which, that's good and all, but I think there's a whole lot more of you out there that listen to us, that if you could do that for us and give us a 5-star review, that would be great.
One thing that just happened that I want to just a little bit.
Yes.
So our Lady Grizz just set a school record, 108 points.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah, they won 157. They beat him by 51. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So, new school record. I'm like, I was kind of tracking it when we were going over because I was like, my God, we're cutting a lot of points. Yeah. So, brand new school record for our Lady Grizz at 108 points. Awesome. Well done.
Wow. Yeah, I'm looking at, they shot 51%, 34% from the 3-point line, 73% from the free throw line.
That's pretty awesome.
Goodness.
Awesome.
They shot a lot of threes. Holy crap. 32 3-pointers? Man. They are fun to watch, by the way. If you have not watched a Lady Grizz basketball game, definitely they've got some really good players.
I have to admit, I haven't caught one yet this year, but seeing that, like, oh my gosh, I'm missing out. So don't be like me. Go get them on ESPN Plus.
Oh man, it is the great to see. And just to give you guys, I know we do Grizz update, and we didn't do the Grizz update just to kind of go over that with you. The men basketball team plays as well. I think they're on the move to. Oh, I want to see. Oh, sorry, I'm thinking off the top of my head because I saw it.
I just saw it a second ago myself. Let me look.
Yeah, Nevada, Reno. They're going to Reno on the 29th.
Oh, yep, on Wednesday. Yep.
Yeah, so they played Houston and got beat pretty bad, but Houston's number 4 in the country.
Yeah, they're
5, something like that.
Well, Nevada's an old Big Sky team, so we got some old blood with
that'll
them.
be a good game. That's on Wednesday at 7.
Yeah, 8. It says 8 on mine.
Really? Mine says 7.
I could be in the wrong.
Oh, because yours is 8 because you're in South Dakota, right?
No, I'm in Mountain Time.
Are you in Mountain Time? Okay, good.
Yeah, but my phone could be messed up because I'm traveling this weekend.
So okay.
I was in Pacific, then back to Mountain, and so yeah.
I wonder if it's going to be on ESPN Plus because it doesn't say ESPN Plus on here.
Say that, and it could be because of the Mountain West. Sometimes those Mountain West home games are on Mountain West Network or something stupid thing like that.
Mountain West.
Yeah, but if you can't get it, go to Varsity Network and listen to Riley.
Exactly. There you go.
It probably, even if he's on the road or either him or Ace will be calling that game, I bet.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all we got, guys, from questions and on Twitter. So make sure that you guys, if you can't make it to the game this Saturday, you watch it on ESPN Plus. Hopefully you can get it wherever you're at. Also, want to thank Luke. Can't thank you enough, Luke, for doing this with me, man. I really appreciate it. He's doing a lot, guys, and really, he's going through the vid with this and pushing through. So give him some love on Twitter, man.
Well, if you are in town, go out, be as loud and crazy as you can. Yes. Have a few extra fireball shots before you go in, and just show those boys from Delaware how loud Wagriz can be at night in December when it's cold. Yeah. Oh man, I cannot wait.
I hope it snows.
Even like Daniel said, I hope it snows because everybody's seen that. He loves the FCS. Like you mentioned that playoff.
Oh yeah,
you've seen that App State game.
Yep.
Like that's what you want. And when it starts snowing, oh my god, it energizes our guys even more.
Oh yeah.
So yeah,
yep.
that would be epic.
Yep. All right, guys. Well, we'll cut here. We're almost on 2 hours, so we'll cut it here, and we'll talk to you guys later. All right, go Grizz.
Go Grizz.